Welcome to today's daily devotion, where we're walking through the corridors of the wisdom of God's Word, deep into Psalms now. We're now in the last third of the wisdom that Psalms has to give to us. And boy, are we getting somewhere. Psalm 109. So much of life is the result of the ego. The ego is ambitious, it's competitive, it's industrious, it's the driving force of almost everything that is achieved in the world around us. It's the thing motivational speakers speak to. If you can find who you are and tap into your internal revenue, there is a world waiting for you to conquer. Now, Psalm 109 is a challenge to go beyond the ego. There are not many who venture there, but if you're willing, Christ will gently guide you to this place. It may not always feel as though it's that gentle. Nevertheless, in his love and tender care, Jesus will take you in your Christian walk from a place where you first of all have to find yourself to the place where you can surrender yourself. So it says in verse 4, I am a man of prayer. In the Hebrew, this verse reads, I am prayer. So I will pray until I become prayer itself. We can move from being a person who prays to becoming a man of prayer or a woman of prayer until we become prayer itself. A man I knew had 2 Rottweilers. They were like his children. He said to me one day, my dogs are sick and they're going to die. Will you pray? If God heals my dogs, then I'll give my life to Jesus. Well, this man, he hadn't even reached the place where he could pray. He wanted me to do his praying for him. So that's not even reaching stage 1 of prayer. You've got to get to the place where you can pray first of all. So the next stage is when others will be praying when they're in trouble. They find themselves in an impossible situation, and so out of their distress, they'll cry out, God, help me. They may even try to do a deal with God. So if you save my marriage, then I'll go to church every Sunday. If you get me out of my alcoholism, then I'll give more. And when in the offerings, they'll make deals with God. You might start there, but prayer is much more than a get me out of jail free card that you play like you're in some kind of cosmic board game. Prayer is a gift. It's a gift that advances your relationship with God. This is the intent of the Lord's Prayer. It's a prayer given to be prayed daily, so that if you begin each day reciting the Lord's Prayer, it might sound somewhat formulaic, but what it's doing is turning you from someone who prays into a man or a woman of prayer. But how can you advance from that to becoming prayer itself? Jesus said, when you pray, go to the secret place. And so he lays stress on the personal and sacred character of the soul's direct communion with the Father. There is something austere to the nature of this call and the necessity of a perfect response. The essential quality of becoming prayer, where you move from praying to becoming prayer itself, is to make your whole life an offering to God. You have to apply the laws of sacrifice. To be a sacrifice requires full surrender. Your will has served its purpose. It has brought you to the altar. Now surrender your will. Surrender everything that his will might be done. In that moment, when your life is given up, his life is received. Being a man or a woman of prayer is an act of the will. Being prayer itself is a renunciation of your will. Not my will, but your will be done. So you have to come to the place where everything you do flows from your devotion to God. It's not you trying to be devoted to God, but you're already devoted, and then everything flows from the devotion of your life to God. You become an act of devotion. You become prayer itself. So this is where you become, in St. Paul's terminology, life-giving perfume. And then it says in verse 28, they may curse you, but you will bless. But when you reach the place where you're thoroughly devoted to God and you're living out your Christian walk in love and humility, the insults and the victimization that people place on you, it becomes a direct attack upon Jesus, the Christ in you. You're completing the sufferings of Christ. There's no need to defend or protect yourself. There's no need to exact revenge. You calmly rest in the assurance that God is looking after you. And people may curse you, but God will bless you. Of this, you can be assured. Your role is to simply surrender and say, not my will, God, but yours be done. And this is the deepest wisdom of all. It seems like foolishness to the world. But this wisdom is the wisdom that has the most powerful effect upon the world around us. John the Baptist had a glimpse of it when he said, Jesus must increase, but I, the ego, the I, must decrease. And Paul manifested when he said, not I, but Christ. So when you enter this wisdom, you'll be amazed. Sin is done with. Ambition is finished. Competition is gone. Envy and jealousy have evaporated. Pride becomes a mere shadow of your past. You are now walking in the blessing of God, and you yourself have become the embodiment of God's blessing to others. Wow. This is high and heady stuff. This is beyond our ability to be rational about it. This is something that only God can lead us into. But he will lead us there. It's simply for us to embrace a life of prayer for us today, and then allow God to work his Spirit and his grace and his nature into us, and then out through us to those around us. God bless you. May you change the world in ways you never thought imaginable. And we'll see you again tomorrow.